First at 4, Parlor games. Big tech shut the right-wing social media site down. Now the free speech debate is raging on. People who use the social media website and app Parlor cannot use it today because Amazon has dumped it from its servers. Over the weekend, Parlor also got deep sixed by the Apple and Google app stores. The issue here, the people on Parlor who were involved in organizing last week's riot at the Capitol and the Parlor users who have threatened Nancy Pelosi, Mike Pence, among many others.
At the same time, Twitter and most other social media sites have banned the president. The CEO of Parlor says it's not fair that the app is about free speech, and he rejects any claims that Parlor contributed at all to last week's deadly riot. Tia is here with a closer look.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Of course, there are passionate arguments on both sides of this debate. But to look at the law, we are joined now by media and legal analyst Daliah Saper, attorney at law. Thank you so much for being with us, Daliah.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get into this. You know, this is really interesting because when you look at the past, especially when you're talking about President Donald Trump, there were some things that people would say fell into the lines of hate speech, but it was allowed to stay on social media. Is there a place for protections when it comes to hate speech?
We live in the United States. One of our fundamental rights is free speech. That includes making really abhorrent comments that are racist, that are hate speech. And so we are allowed to have controversial or offensive views, and the government cannot restrict us from espousing those controversial, hateful, whatever you want to call them, offensive views. That is why we don't see the government restricting us from making those comments. I can post a website tomorrow and write terrible things on there if I want to. The same does not apply to a private company like, you know, any of these big tech companies are technically private companies. They're not government owned. So their ability to decide whether or not they want certain content on their site is technically up to them, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the controversy and debate about the scope of their power and whether or not they should be moderating content.
All right, Attorney Saper, so hate speech is one thing. What about if a company like Twitter or Facebook decides to leave that information up there? Could they be held liable if violence then ensues because of what was posted?
This is a recurring issue every time we have a terrorist attack or violent action and that has been organized through social media. One of the first places companies, organizations, families of victims will go or attempt to do is sue the platforms. However, the platforms are protected by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. The act states, it's been around for a long time, it's also now in the news a lot. It states that platforms have legal immunity for the actions and statements of their users. So if I write something really hateful or that is that potentially incites violence, there is no rule that says the platform has an obligation to remove it. They leave it in the discretion of the platform. And so long as the platform is not editing, contributing, or serving as an editorial function, yeah, they can keep it up, or they can state in their terms of service, we don't allow that kind of conduct, and remove it.
Let's talk about Parlor, because Parlor has been known for what some would call free speech. Others would definitely say it's hate speech. They've been dropped from Amazon, Apple, and also Google. Is this a legal action?
Is it a legal action by the tech giants? Yes. You don't have to. They're not obligated, again, to accept any app or every app that is available on their servers. There is nothing otherwise, though. There's nothing preventing Parler from creating a different place on the internet and allowing people to engage there. So, yes, it is legal. There is no obligation or rule that states you have to let all apps exist on your ecosystem.
The big story today is that Parler is now suing Amazon. Do they actually have a case?
We'll see. I think we're going to, I think right now Section 230 is very strong, although it's been challenged, and it's being, whether or not it should be repealed or modified is a big controversy. We're going to see what their argument is going to be. If there is this, if I'm Parler, I'm going to argue that there are improper decisions being made, that they're on one hand stating that this is hate speech, on the other hand they're letting other content go through, and so that's eroding the liability protection of the platforms.
Let's talk about the conservative side, because many of them argue they had nothing to do with last week's attack, and they say they're being censored for the actions of a select few. How do you respond to that legally?
Legally, I think it's the same argument. As from a platform standpoint, honestly, the less that the platform does, the better they are from a legal standpoint. They can't be accused of moderating or editorializing the content that lives on the Facebook, on Twitter, on whatever the platform is. Conservatives believe that there is too much labeling of their content. There's too much removal of conservative views. And on the flip side, the left thinks that the platforms are not doing enough. They're not removing misinformation, fake news. So you see both sides of the spectrum, both the left and the right, upset with Section 230 and what the platforms should or should not do, but they object to the law and the platform's actions for different reasons.
All right, Attorney Saper, thank you so much for your legal expertise today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Anthony and Sally, I'll send it back to you.